So we said we'd get to this. Let me follow through on it. These are all the scenarios for Dave Birkett's trade down.
Yes.
First one is scenario 1, Vegas, baby. Lions move down from 6 to 7. They get the Raiders' 4th-round choice this year and a 4th-round pick next year.
To move back one spot.
One spot. And they get Tyree Wilson, the player they probably would have taken had they stayed there.
Yeah, my thought on that is you wait to the last second to see if there's a deal. And if that's the best deal that comes out and you know you're going to get the same player, then make it. Right? If nobody else is calling but the Raiders, take the deal. You're still getting the player you want and you're getting more draft capital. It makes all the sense in the world.
This is like a win-win. If you have no other options and you're sitting there and you're like, all right, I think we're going to take Tyree Wilson, the Raiders call and say, we'll give you 2 4th-rounders for this pick. And you go, sure. First of all, I'm going to get the same player. Secondly, I'm going to drop one salary slot. He's not going to pay him quite as much. It's not hugely significant. And I'm going to get extra draft picks.
Right, which you'd have to ask yourself, by the way, why would the Raiders trade up one spot? It's a trade that would have to be made, like from the Raiders' standpoint, you're going to put a time parameter on it because you're getting some intel that tells you that maybe Atlanta wants to move up to 6.
Yeah, they're worried that
somebody's going to move up ahead of them, so the Raiders are like, okay, take it or leave it. Here's a trade right now. And you're like, okay, I guess we'll. Yeah, but then your own intel should tell you something else. It's an interesting scenario because, of course, it's a no-brainer. You do it if there's nothing else there, but why would you do it if you're the Raiders? Why are you trading up?
Scenario 2, 8-town 2-step. The Lions move down 2 spots from 6 to 8. They get Atlanta's 3rd-rounder this year and a 6th-rounder next year. And the Lions take Devin Witherspoon at 8.
This one's, again, this is one where you're trading back and you're not getting a whole lot. You're getting a 3rd and a 6th.
Mm-hmm.
So you already have 2 6th-round picks, I believe. So you're adding to that.
But now you have 3 picks. I'm sorry, you have 6 picks in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. It just doesn't seem like it's a whole lot. But what you're not getting is the player you were going to take at 6.
No. But
so now you're shifting.
Well,
how far down are you shifting?
We don't know that.
Well, I'm just going by Burkett's thing. If he's saying the guy they want at 6 is Tyree Wilson, and then you take him at 7. Now you're dropping down to
let's think about that
further.
If Atlanta's moving up from 8 to 6, are they moving up for a quarterback or are they moving up for Tyree Wilson?
I would think they're moving up for a quarterback.
So then he's expecting that the Raiders will take Tyree Wilson at 7? Because that's the only other team between. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm okay with Witherspoon. Don't get me wrong.
No, I am too.
I mean, I think if Witherspoon comes in, he has a chance to be the starter opposite of Cam Sutton.
Yeah, I don't have a huge problem with this trade back scenario because I like the player. Yeah. This is all, obviously, to me, it's contingent on what happens with Jalen Carter. If Jalen Carter's gone at 5, it's moot, right? Doesn't even matter. So then it becomes the player you're getting with your first round pick. I'm a big Devin Witherspoon fan. I'm a Christian Gonzalez fan, like both of those guys. And there are other players I like, too, that I could take it at 6 if Jalen Carter's not there. So moving back and getting more draft capital, I'm open to it. Plus, if you end up, now you got 3 6-round picks, right?
Yeah.
You could package a couple of those and move up to get somebody you really want.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing that Dave said at the beginning of the story, that there's subtleties that teams consider that we don't. Ken came up with a great one a couple days ago. Said the Lions right now have the 2nd most money invested in the offensive line room in the league. And they've got Jonah Jackson coming up for a contract soon. And after that, they're going to have Penei Sewell coming up for a contract. That they almost, if they want to be fiscally responsible, they almost have to draft Jonah Jackson's replacement.
Right.
Because otherwise, they might have too much money sunk into the offensive line. So just to make the books balance and be able to spend money elsewhere and not be overly committed financially to one position group, they might have to take Osiris Torrance at 18, the guard from Florida, just because it makes fiscal sense.
Well, or you keep that money invested in the offensive line and you draft also a quarterback so that you're not paying the quarterback as much when Goff's contract comes up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the way to balance that out. And that's the way I'd rather go. I want the money invested in the offensive line. If I know it's a good offensive line, you pay for that offensive line, keep it because it gets your offense going.
So the reason I brought it up is Dave writes, and this is, again, one of those things that teams consider and think about that we don't. Dave writes, keep in mind the Lions have 5 of the first 81 picks in this year's draft. They currently have 69 players on their 53-man roster and may value future draft capital, a pick in the first 3 rounds of what should be a deeper draft next year. So the roster's kind of heavy as it is. Mm-hmm. They have extra players coming in this year because they have 8 draft picks. So, they might need to consolidate a little bit and hoard the picks next year in a deeper draft when they'll have more open roster spots. Again, things that we don't think about.
No, we don't. We're not thinking about that.
But the teams do.
But yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll bet they have so many different charts I would love to be privy to in Brad Holmes' room in his office.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you talk about draft charts. It's not just this year. They've got draft charts. They're charting people the next couple drafts or keeping players that they're keeping eyes on. They have free agency. They're looking at who's going to be a free agency this year or this year. They've got wish lists. They've got all types of stuff that you would love to be privy to.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next, scenario 3 in Dave Birkett's story today of trade back possibilities. He calls this one backing up. Lions move down 5 spots from 6 to 11. Tennessee gives Detroit their 3rd-round choice at 72 and a 2nd-rounder next year. And at 11, the Lions take backing up, running back Bijan Robinson. Says, hey, look, McShay says he's a better prospect than Saquon Barkley was, and the Lions set up their Goff-Gurley combination. What do you make of this one?
Well, I kind of side a little bit with Jim Costa on this, and that is the idea that there are running backs all throughout the draft, and running back is the one position that you don't have to spend money on, because it's the least valued position in the league when it comes to money. And you get your use out of the guy on your first contract. So do you need to reach out and get a running back in the first round, or can you get one later in the draft that isn't much different? Now, if you think that Bijan Robinson is the best running back since Saquon Barkley, it still doesn't mean terribly much to me. I like running backs. I would use running backs. But I could see myself saying, I don't need to go this route anymore. I'd rather take it on a wide receiver from an offensive standpoint or an offensive lineman. There are just too many running backs, I think, that I'm not sure there's a whole lot of difference between Bijan Robinson and these other guys.
Yeah, I think you'd have to think that there was to do this. And B, one thing that's always intrigued me is organizations that zig when the rest of the league is zagging. And this would kind of be one of those moves to invest a first-round draft pick in the top half of the draft in a running back. And it kind of breaks from something that I think is foolish in the draft, and that's hard and fast rules. Now, those rules are, people can cite examples of why you don't take a corner like a Kuda or you don't take a tight end like Hawkinson. And you can be proven right a lot of times. But at the end of the day, it's not about winning the draft the day of the draft. It's looking back in 10 years and saying, did we get a guy who was worthy of being in the top 3 or 4 or 8 or 9 picks? And so, if you look back at some draft years from now, somebody who was picking 7 might say, we should have taken Travis Kelce. Or we should have taken, who's the guy that went to Sauce Gardner. Like, we should have taken these guys when we had the chance, even though they flew in the face of the hard and fast rule. You don't take a corner, you don't take a tight end. Now, to be worth it, it has to be a different kind of draft, but every draft is indeed different. So if they go running back, it's not about being right on draft day. It's about being right 5 years from now. And man, when you got a great one, God, it makes a huge difference.
It does, and I'm going back. I'm going through the leading rushers from this past year. Josh Jacobs, who was the leading running back and leading rusher last year, I should say, with over 1,600 yards. He was a first-round pick. Derrick Henry was a second-round pick. Nick Chubb was a second-round pick. Saquon Barkley was a first-round pick. That's your top 4 from, the leading rushers this past season. You keep going down the list. Miles Sanders, who was 5th in rushing, he was a second-round pick. I think Dalvin Cook was he a first-round pick? He was a second-round pick. Dalvin Cook, a second-round pick. So the majority of these guys already are second-round picks. You don't have to go and get the guy in the first round, even though Josh Jacobs, I think 24th overall in the draft, he's the leading rusher, and Saquon Barkley was the 4th leading rusher. 2 of them are, and Saquon was such a high first-round pick. You get value out of it, but you get value out of second-round picks. You get value out of third-round picks.